How a single ship managed to stop global trade for almost a week and make businesses lose billions every day. This is about the Suez Canal and the Evergiven container ship accident, and also why it could happen again. Subscribe to the channel. The Suez Canal is in Egypt and connects the Mediterranean Sea with the Red Sea. It dramatically shortens the route between Europe and Asia. That is why container ships, tankers, and vessels carrying raw materials pass through it non-stop. Before the canal existed, ships had to go around Africa. That took a lot of time and fuel. There was also an overland route across Egypt, but it required unloading and reloading cargo, and it was expensive. The canal solved that problem directly. Attempts to create a water route through Egypt go back to ancient times. There was the so-called Canal of the Pharaohs, which linked the Nile to the Red Sea area through stretches of natural waterways. Over time, it got filled in with sand. In the middle of the 19th century, the project was pushed forward by the French diplomat Ferdinand de Lesseps. He secured approval from the Egyptian authorities and arranged funding through the sale of shares. On paper, the money was there, but politics got in the way. The main opponent was Great Britain, the leading maritime power at the time. The old system worked fine for them, and any change was seen as a risk. There were other critics too. They warned about potential flooding and sanitation problems. Construction took place in the desert, and it was brutally difficult. For a long time, the digging was done by hand, and water and food had to be delivered over long distances. People worked in extreme heat and got sick. Some workers died from the conditions and infections. A little-known detail, in the early stages, they used forced labor from local farmers. Later, under outside pressure, this approach was restricted. To speed things up, they began using excavators and dredgers. At the time, this was brand new technology. The canal was not built as a simple straight ditch. They had to straighten the route, widen certain sections, use natural lakes, and constantly fight silt buildup. Sand and mud shift the bottom quickly here, so maintaining depth became a permanent task. The canal opened in 1869. Its length is about 160 kilometers. It became a symbolic boundary between Asia and Africa and immediately had a strong effect on trade because the route was shorter. There is a common myth that the opera Aida was written for the opening of the canal. In reality, the premiere happened later. But the idea of a cultural event really was discussed. Egypt wanted to show the world modernization and growing influence. At first, the owners were France and Egypt. Then Egypt, because of debt, sold its share to Great Britain. The British gained strategic control over a crucial route linking Europe with Asia and colonial territories. Interesting fact, the British purchase was done extremely fast. Prime Minister Disraeli brought in bank financing and closed the deal in a matter of days. It was not a long campaign, it was a rapid decision at the highest level. Over time, the canal brought in more and more money. The importance of the route grew especially after oil shipments from the Persian Gulf region increased. For Egypt, it was a key source of revenue and a tool of foreign policy. When Egypt decided to run the canal on its own, a conflict erupted that went down in history as the Suez Crisis. Shipping stopped for a time. Major powers got involved, and the situation showed how easily the canal can turn into leverage. Another long shutdown happened later because of war in the Middle East. The canal ended up closed for many years. Ships were left stuck on the route, unable to leave, and their crews lived there for a long time. Those stranded ships were later called the Yellow Fleet because their hulls became coated in sandy dust. A little-known fact, the crews set up a mail exchange and even produced homemade stamps. This went on for years. After mines were cleared and the canal was restored, it started working again, but for a long time it was essentially single lane. Ships moved in scheduled groups, and oncoming convoys could pass only at specific widened sections. Any delay quickly grew the line. In 2015, Egypt carried out a major modernization. They deepened and widened part of the channel and also built a parallel stretch of about 72 kilometers. Capacity increased, but not the entire route became two-way. There is an important but not obvious side of the canal. It affects nature. Species from the Red Sea gradually move into the Mediterranean through it. This is called Lesepsian migration, and it changes the mix of fish and invertebrates along the coasts. In the modern world, the canal is critical because of delivery speed. Many companies keep minimal inventory and rely on precise timing. If the route is blocked, the problem is not about one product. It hits thousands of items in different countries at once. In the spring of 2021, the Evergiven container ship was traveling from Asia to Europe under the Panamanian flag. There were about 18,000 containers on board. That means electronics, clothing, furniture, and industrial components. The vessel was huge, roughly 400 meters long. In the narrow parts of the canal, maneuvering is limited. If a ship drifts off the line of travel, it is hard to correct quickly, especially with wind and poor visibility. On March 23rd, the weather got worse and a sandstorm began. Visibility dropped, wind gusts increased. In those conditions, the risk of losing an accurate heading rises, and any sharp move can make the situation worse. In a narrow canal, a ship can behave unpredictably because of how water flows near the banks and because the depth is small relative to the hull. In practice, that means the bow and stern can swing faster than the bridge team expects. Under Suez Canal transit rules, Egyptian pilots come aboard. They provide steering guidance. At the same time, legal responsibility in disputed cases often ends up on the captain and the ship owner, which creates conflict after accidents. According to journalists' reports, there were 2 pilots on the Evergiven, and disagreements came up between them about what to do. With strong wind and worsening visibility, that could have led to uncoordinated decisions and lost time correcting the course. As a result, the ship pivoted, the bow struck one bank, and the stern hit the other. The vessel ended up sideways and completely blocked traffic. Similar incidents had happened before, but here the size of the ship made the situation extraordinary. Right after the accident, small equipment was working on shore, including an excavator that ended up in photos and quickly spread through the news. But serious resources were also being assembled on site, tugboats and dredging machines. The problem was that the bow section was deeply embedded in the ground. Simple towing was not enough. To move the ship, they had to reduce the load and remove some of the soil that was holding the hull in place at the same time. While attempts to refloat the ship were underway, vessels piled up on both sides of the canal. The number grew to more than 400. The line included container ships, tankers, grain carriers, and ships with chemical cargo. The canal essentially stopped doing its main job. Damage estimates varied, but people often cited a figure of about $10 billion per day based on the value of delayed cargo. It is important to understand this is not just direct money. It includes penalties, broken contracts, and higher logistics costs. Some companies decided not to wait and rerouted ships around Africa. That added about a week of travel or more. Fuel costs and crew expenses went up. Risks also increased because the route is longer and crosses more challenging weather zones. The schedule disruption triggered a chain reaction. If a shipment does not arrive, it cannot be unloaded, and the containers cannot return to circulation. If containers do not get back to the departure port, the next batch of goods is delayed even before loading. That is how a delay spreads through the system fast. Tankers became a separate topic. In the oil market, expectations matter, so the news about the blockage pushed prices up by roughly 5 to 7%. Even a small percentage increase translates into enormous sums across the global energy trade volume. They considered partially unloading the container ship to reduce draft, but there were no suitable cranes and infrastructure on site to remove thousands of tons of cargo quickly, so they chose methods that could be done with the equipment available. They began pumping out fuel and water from the ballast tanks. That reduces weight and lets the hull rise slightly. At the same time, they dredged the bottom near the bow, removing soil. Work continued non-stop because every hour of downtime made the queue larger. A strong high tide became the decisive factor. Water level rose, the hull got extra lift, and tugboats could pull more effectively. They moved the bow into a deeper section. After that, the ship could be turned, and the route was cleared. After the canal was freed, traffic resumed, but clearing the backlog took time. Ships were released in groups to avoid creating new problems in narrow stretches. Ports in Europe and Asia then spent a long time smoothing out arrival and unloading schedules. Then legal disputes began. The Canal Authority said strong wind was the cause. A navigation error theory was also discussed. In cases like this, there is rarely one cause. Usually it is a mix of weather, procedures, and decisions made in a specific moment. Egypt demanded compensation of about $1 billion. The ship owner and insurers said the amount was inflated. After negotiations, they settled at roughly $550 million, and part of the payment was made right away to release the ship. After a long detention, the ship and crew were allowed to leave, and the Evergiven continued its voyage. Later, the ship passed through the canal again without incident. But the story became a major signal for the entire industry because it revealed how vulnerable a key route is. The main takeaway is about how modern supply chains work. Companies often keep the bare minimum inventory to save on warehousing. That works as long as transport stays on schedule. But when a disruption happens, a stoppage quickly turns into shortages and rising costs. Another takeaway is the growth in ship size. Ship owners increase capacity to reduce the cost of moving one container. But infrastructure bottlenecks remain, and the bigger the ship, the smaller the margin for maneuvering and the harder the salvage work. A separate problem is that many canal sections do not allow a quick bypass or turnaround. Even after modernization, most of the route did not become fully two-way. That means a major accident can still block traffic completely. A little-known operational detail, canal transits are built around a strict convoy schedule. Ships move in columns, and opposing traffic lets each other pass at special widened areas. That is why an accident disrupts not just one transit, it throws off the entire plan for many hours ahead. Weather limits in the region are especially important because of sandstorms. They reduce visibility and increase wind side load on the hull and the container stacks. With a large side profile, even brief gusts can noticeably change heading in a narrow stretch. After the accident, tougher rules were discussed. Measures mentioned include mandatory tug escort for the largest ships on difficult segments, stricter wind limits, and improved crew training on simulators that reflect the canal's specific conditions. Technical solutions are also being discussed: more precise traffic control systems, additional sensors, and digital modeling of transits. The goal is simple: to understand in advance under what conditions a particular ship can pass safely and when it is better to stop traffic. The most straightforward solution is further widening and deepening of the canal, But it is expensive and difficult. Depth has to be maintained constantly, soil has to be removed, and banks have to be reinforced. This is not a one-time job. The canal requires continuous maintenance. Egypt earns about $5 billion a year from the canal, so for the country it is a strategic asset. But for the world, the more important point is different. It is part of global infrastructure. The vulnerability of a single route becomes a problem for manufacturers, carriers, and consumers across continents. The Evergiven incident showed that a rare accident can cost more than a series of small delays. The system is built for continuous flow. When the flow stops, the accumulated consequences keep showing up for a long time, even after traffic resumes. It also became clear that responsibility and pilotage rules need clarification. If a pilot gives mandatory guidance, there should be transparent procedures for who makes the final call and how commands are recorded. That lowers risk and makes investigations easier. For the viewer, this story matters because it explains why prices and delivery times can change for no obvious reason. The problem started in Egypt, but the effects were felt by stores, factories, and logistics companies worldwide. Geography here turns directly into economics. The chance of a repeat remains because ships keep getting bigger, and the canal does not get wider evenly along its entire length. That means measures are needed that improve safety without paralyzing flow every time the weather turns. The Suez Canal remains a critical route, and the Evergiven accident became a clear example of how sensitive global trade is to disruptions in one place. The canal speeds up shipping, but it demands strict rules, discipline, and investment in safety. Subscribe to the channel and write in the comments who you think should carry the main responsibility in incidents like this: the captain, the pilots, or the canal authority.